I was playing a video game last night. It's your standard first-person shooter, and the game type was King of the Hill. The objective of that game is for your team to hold control of an area and not to let the other team do the same. Meanwhile, players can ride vehicles, they can find and use all sorts of different types of weapons, they can basically wreak havoc on the other team. Skipping the smallest details, by the end of the round, my team had lost, and I had died an embarrassingly large number of times, but I was also awarded the objectively correct badge. What that badge meant was, despite the fact that my team had lost, and despite the fact that I had died a tragic number of times, out of everyone on my team, I did the best job of trying to control the hill. My immediate reaction to this award was to dismiss it as some sort of participation trophy. But then it occurred to me that the objectively correct award was a recurring theme in my life, specifically when it came to younger me dealing with girls for the first time. I was comically unaware when girls would make passes at me in high school and in college, usually because I was distracted by the surface level conversation or whatever the task at hand was, so I was objectively correct. It's only recently that I've realized how many times this happened when I was thinking about the past or telling stories from high school and college. There was a tickle fight initiated by my high school crush that I decided to physically dominate. I received a random summer-long vacation invitation from a girl that I barely knew, and I dismissed it as a joke. I want to tell you the most laughable example of an objectively correct story from my past. This story takes place in Wildwood, New Jersey, the weekend of senior prom. The friend group that I went to prom with also planned on a weekend-long vacation to the New Jersey shore after the prom. There were 4 or 5 couples that traveled together and a couple of solo travelers like myself. We got a couple of motel rooms that were all side by side. Each couple got their own motel room, and there were 2 or 3 extra motel rooms for the odd travelers. At the time, I didn't participate in any drinking because I thought I was an athlete, and I thought athletes were not allowed to drink. But nobody else in my group was an athlete from what I can tell, because just about everybody else was sloppily intoxicated by mid-afternoon. There was some sort of drama over the course of the afternoon. I don't really remember the details. I just know that the room arrangements got shifted around and I ended up being placed in a room with a very attractive girl from my high school that I barely knew. Her name, we'll call her Elizabeth, or Liz for short. I didn't know Liz well, but I'd be lying if I said that I had never noticed her before. Senior year was an interesting year for me. I was just beginning to gain a little bit of confidence in myself, but I still spent the majority of my girl interactions alternating between awkward and oblivious. Well, here comes the oblivious. The weird behavior started almost immediately. Again, we were at the beach, so we were both wearing bathing suits. I got to the room first, and considering how late it was, I decided to tuck into one of the 2 beds there and try to go to sleep right away. So Liz maneuvered herself between the 2 beds, so she was standing right at my head level between the 2 beds facing away, and then she asked me a question out loud to draw my attention to her, and then bent over to pick something up that I had just watched her place at her own feet a few seconds beforehand. I couldn't for the life of me figure out why she didn't realize what she had just done had caused me to unintentionally stare at her bottom. Then I got a second show when she did the exact same thing a second time. I thought to myself, maybe Liz didn't realize that I could see her from where I was laying, so the polite thing to do would be to put the covers up over my head while I answered her question. As the covers went up over my head, I even caught a glimpse of her taking off her top, which was a first in-person experience of that nature for me. I even remember thinking to myself, I should leave the room. That's the polite thing to do. Liz decided to turn it up a notch after not getting a reaction from me there. After a few minutes, Liz called out, "Hey, I'm cold over here." Now, I've seen movies before, so I knew I had to respond to this somehow. So I took off my comforter and I threw it on top of her. Then I tried to go to sleep under my sheet. Ladies and gentlemen, I am prepared to receive my objectively correct award. Liz started to get agitated for reasons I couldn't grasp at the time, and she said again, "I'm still cold over here." Well, I had had just about enough at that point, so I angrily replied, "Well, all I've got is this sheet." I was not ready to give up that damn sheet. And she timidly replied, "But no one's ever said no to Liz before." That's right, she referred to herself in the 3rd person. Now, I had averted my eyes to respect her privacy. I had willingly given up my comforter so that she wouldn't be cold. And in my objectively correct mind, she was asking for the last thing I had for warmth all night long. So my response was, "Well, Liz better get used to it." And those were the last words spoken between us that night. It wasn't until years later when I was thinking back on that night that I realized that I might not have understood exactly what was going on at the time. Well, at least I've got my badge.